I wanted to point out we opened the show in the last hour talking a little bit about the vice presidential debate that took place last night. Now, I don't think this is going to set any records. The all-time record for vice presidential debate viewing was Joe Biden versus Sarah Palin in 2008. Why did that happen? Well, it's the same reason it happened with Donald Trump. I mean, he's a television celebrity. He draws people in, and even if you like him, you know there's always the chance, and if you don't like him, you know that there's the chance he's going to say something unexpected. Sarah Palin was also a television personality. She'd been on local TV in Alaska and had that background. And she was somewhat good looking, and it attracted a lot of people because of that star power that people may bring to this. But generally, the vice presidential debates don't have a lot of influence on the overall outcome of a presidential election. And we have to go back to the fact people aren't voting for Mike Pence or Tim Kaine. They're voting for Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump. I know some people out there say, but Bill, you didn't mention Jill Stein and you didn't mention Gary Johnson. Yeah, I know. And there might even be elements. Ron Paul was quoted the other day on MSDNC. They claimed that he had said he was going to be voting for Jill Stein, and he got angry, and he was on the air with them and said, that's not the case at all. Now, he said, I might share a couple of viewpoints with her on foreign policy, but he said, everything else, we don't agree whatsoever. They were trying to give the impression to a lot of young libertarians, hint, hint, we want you to vote for the liberal, and they thought they could put one over on people. It didn't work. People say, Bill, they didn't really think they were putting one over on people. This comes from the same network. Well, it's the sister network of NBC, which we talked about last week, edited the George Zimmerman 9/11 tape and blew up a pickup truck to try and to give the impression the truck was dangerous. They put an explosive device underneath it and then said, oh, the gas tank is faulty. We're seeing a lot of this. CNN edited the tape the other day that was released by police in Charlotte so they could edit out police telling the man who was shot and killed and that caused all the rioting to drop the gun. CNN edited that portion out. Why? Because they want to try and inflame the situation, and they're trying to tell you that police are bad. We deal with this every day when it comes to media. Speaking of media, Hillary Clinton was appearing before a group yesterday, and she got asked a question. The story broke earlier this week that said that when she was Secretary of State way back in 2010, in November of 2010, I believe it was, she had asked if it was possible to call in a drone strike to kill Julian Assange, who is the founder of WikiLeaks, which has, by the way, not been very friendly to Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton got asked about this yesterday. A reporter said, probably not from the New York Times or Pravda on the Potomac or MSDNC, but a reporter doing one of those, as Rush Limbaugh calls it, random acts of journalism, asked Hillary Clinton, did indeed you suggest that we should assassinate Julian Assange? Now, I want you to listen to her response. Think for a moment after you hear it about how media would react if this was a Republican giving this response.
Well, I don't know anything about what he's talking about, and I don't recall any joke. It would have been a joke if it had been said, but I don't recall that.
No. She was reported, according to her staff, that they thought she was joking, and it turned out she wasn't. And then they were all a little alarmed by her call to have a drone come in and kill this guy for leaking certain government documents, which, liberals, though, when Daniel Ellsberg leaked the Pentagon Papers, liberals thought it was a great thing. And liberals, when they illegally got a hold of Donald Trump's tax returns, a portion of his tax returns, and the New York Times published it, thought it was a great thing. But when Julian Assange and WikiLeaks manages to get their hands upon emails of Clinton's or the Democrat National Committee, then it's a bad thing. But here's what my main point about all of this is. You did not hear her say unequivocally no. She didn't say no when she was asked the question. I don't recall is not no. Take a listen again.
Well, I don't know anything about what he's talking about, and I don't recall any joke. It would have been a joke if it had been said, but I don't recall that.
I don't recall that. It would have been a joke if I did say it, but I don't recall it. If you didn't do it, you would say no. You would say no. Now, if a Republican stood there, let's say this had been Dick Cheney or George W. Bush, and said, I don't recall that. What do you mean you don't recall? Well, that must mean you're doing a non-denial denial, or is it a denial of a non-denial, or the media would be in a frenzy. Well, he didn't exactly deny it, now did he? Nope, 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 he didn't say no. But when Hillary Clinton says it, well, if the story was reported at all by mainstream media, it's buried on page B17 today. This is why those of us who are of the right of center persuasion in this country have no trust whatsoever for mainstream media. And the liberals out there are going, yeah, baby, you do it, yeah. Well, then you're complicit in the big lie. And if you're proud of that and feel that the ends justify the means, then you are clearly siding with evil. Because if this continues in this country, and people don't get the facts that they need in order to make judgments, then even if you think it's good for you now, 10 years from now, it could lead to something far worse. 912, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. How difficult is it for people to realize she just brushed that off? Because apparently it could be true. And Richard Nixon got in trouble. One of the last interviews he did before he passed away in the early 1990s, he was doing an interview with Mike Wallace for 60 Minutes, and the subject came up about some ne'er-do-well that we were dealing with overseas, some political ne'er-do-well, and he said, yeah, well, CIA could do what it used to do, or reportedly did years ago, and take him out. And CBS and 60 Minutes were deluged with, that evil Richard Nixon, once again calling on assassinating foreign leaders. What a terrible thing to say. But here's Hillary Clinton talking about assassinating Julian Assange and says, gosh, I don't remember. Well, okay, is that early onset dementia, Mrs. Clinton? I don't remember. Is that why you're falling down all the time? You're being mean-spirited. You're part of the vast right-wing conspiracy, aren't you? So that's what you have. When I listen to her, by the way, all I can think of, there are things that just come to my mind. Yes, like fingernails on a chalkboard. Meanwhile, as I said earlier, Rush Limbaugh calls it a random act of journalism when somebody asks these people a question like that. Apparently there was no follow-up saying, what do you mean I don't recall? Does that mean no, it didn't happen? But she's not alone, or the questioner was not alone in offering that question. As it turns out, there was another random act of journalism this week over at MSDNC's Morning Joe. Mrs. Clinton is railing about Donald Trump supposedly not paying taxes. All the New York Times said was, it could be, didn't say it was fact, but it could be Trump didn't have to pay taxes for 18 years on his loss in 1996. It could be is not a fact. But Mrs. Clinton is trying to make hay out of this. Listen to Mika Brzezinski's reaction. She may be losing one of America's second-generation liberal establishment types in Mika Brzezinski.
I've just noticed a confidence here that I don't think should be there among the campaign. I'm sorry. But, I mean, you think about this tax thing. Unless were laws broken, did the New York Times find that any laws were broken?
No.
Were any laws broken?
No.
Okay,
no.
So he talks about brilliantly using the system. Great. The Hillary Clinton could have had that same reaction to her speech money. That she says she's going to change Wall Street. But you know what? I use the system to make millions of dollars. But instead, she hides it. Donald Trump just doesn't hide it. He's very comfortable with the fact that he followed the law and made a lot of money. She also followed the law and made a lot of money. And for some reason, it's okay to look at that speech money. And somehow we just let it go because her campaign keeps it kind of under. It's the same thing. And that's what people see. People see somebody being honest about it and someone kind of like not mentioning it, but still doing it. What's the difference? Does anyone want to explain to me? Because I think voters like what they saw from Donald Trump.
Ooh. Well, she's probably getting an email herself right now from a more secure server saying, look, you work for me. You understand it? I told you I wouldn't come back and claim your soul until after you had some big success over at MSDNC. Brzezinski was a local television anchor in Connecticut. She got fired, and then suddenly she pops up with a major network job afterwards. So you do wonder who Mika made a deal with. Obviously Hillary Clinton or Hillary's boss somewhere in the nether reaches. Speaking of Hillary Clinton, this is another one that was a blip on the map yesterday and has not picked up any traction in mainstream media since. From the Politico, of all places, also a left-leaning publication. Obama's Justice Department drops charges against alleged broker of Libyan weapons. I'm just going to jump around but give you a few details out of this story. The Obama administration is moving to dismiss charges against an arms dealer it had accused of selling weapons that were destined for Libyan rebels. The deal averts a trial that threatened to cast additional scrutiny on Hillary Clinton's private emails as Secretary of State and to expose reported Central Intelligence Agency attempts to arm rebels fighting Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi. Atturi, and that's the fellow who was accused of selling the arms, Atturi associate asserted that the government dropped the case because the proceedings could have embarrassed Clinton and President Barack Obama by calling attention to the reported role of their administration in supplying weapons that fell into the hands of Islamic extremist militants. So, in other words, they were shipping weapons to depose Gaddafi, who was an American ally and had been since 2003, when he flipped after the beginning of the war in Iraq, and had been working with us very closely on intelligence matters and in the Middle East and the like. And yet, Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama were running guns to the people who wanted to kill Gaddafi and actually ended up doing it. And those people are now called ISIS. Not ISIS in the Middle East, but ISIS in North Africa. And so if they had pursued charges against this arms dealer, this international arms broker, this would have all come out just before the election. And so, no, 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 no. That bad man is going to go free so that the bad woman can be elected president. And that was in the Politico, folks. That's not in some right-wing journal of opinion. 19 minutes after 9 o'clock. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. Hey, we've got a lot more to talk about this morning, including Hollywood. If we get a chance, Hollywood telling you who you should vote for. And after all, if your favorite actress or actor, I guess today it's considered sexist to say actress. I don't care. If they tell you who to vote for with on, by gosh, they know a lot of stuff. They're like LeBron James. You know, he bounces a pig's bladder on a barn floor really, really well. So if he thinks Hillary's cool, then she's got to be, and I got to vote for her. Maybe I'll have LeBron's success if I do. Of course, you'll have to grow another foot taller, but more on the way, as we like to say. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. It's 45. Yeah, I'm not wrong very often. I think I know I was wrong once in like 1979. And then a couple of times about women I proposed to. But other than that, you know, I'm seldom wrong in life. But I have an email here. And in the previous hour of the program, I mentioned that I didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings when I was talking about people of various colors. And this comes in from Anna, writing us from over in the Minnetonka area. As an art teacher for 27 years, I wanted to let you know that the color white is the reflection of all color waves of the spectrum. I'd said it was the absence of all colors. It might technically still be, but it's reflecting them away. And she writes, black is the absorption of all color waves. Just letting you know the technical aspect of color. See, art was not my specialty when I was in school. I remember we had to build some models out of clay and then fire them in the kiln, and I decided to build an armadillo. You know how much time that takes? My art teacher was not pleased with me. It never got into the kiln. It just sat there and dried and then cracked, and I didn't get a good grade because of it. And he was never very nice to me afterwards the rest of my life. Got a quick mention. Temperature right now is 45, on our way into the mid-50s today. Bill Colley with you, of course, on News Radio 1310, KLIX, NewsRadio1310.com. And the colder weather, as a reminder, things will get much colder, likely. We say likely, unless the caldera blows up. But we'll get much colder before the end of the winter months, which are on the way. And if you need help with heating your home, you need to call the pros at Ramsey Heating and Electric. The team at Ramsey's will make sure it's done right the first time. Problem-free. Cozy winters are found at Ramsey Heating and Electric, 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley. Telephone number 678-0459. Ramsey Heating and Electric, where they sell warm winters and cool summers. Telephone caller joining us. The number is 736-0300. And caller, you're up next. You're on the air.
Thank you. I heard the other day that Hillary lost several $1 billion when she was a Secretary of State.
Yes, that's a true story.
Yeah, well, maybe if she looked down in her basement or the closet in the Clinton Library, she might find it.
I thank you much. In fact, I got to add to that. I'm glad you brought that up because it's not on my list of things today, but it should be mentioned. It's not just WikiLeaks that's a problem for her. There's an organization called Guccifer. They've arrested one of the guys they thought was Guccifer, but there's a lot of them. It's a name of a guy, rhymes with Lucifer, but since she already has a patent on that name or a copyright, he had to use something different. Guccifer says that when the TARP program, that was the Troubled Asset Relief Program, was cobbled together, and that was when they bailed out the banks after the 2008 meltdown. The writer says that as it turns out, people like Barney Frank and a lot of other Democrats around the country helped give that money to friends of theirs in the banking industry who then turned around and gave some of that money back in the form of campaign contributions. Those would be called kickbacks. So they weren't there to bail out the banks and protect you. They were there to ensure that they had more campaign cash. Barney liked to say, is that campaign cash in your pocket, or are you happy to see me? 927, you're up next. You're on the air with Bill Colley on KLIX. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was listening about an hour ago, and I heard our favorite liberal get on the horn and start spewing this normal crap. It occurred to me that these loony liberals out there, they like to interrupt people when they're talking, kind of like the debate last night.
Uh-huh.
The moderator would not shut up long enough to let Pence answer a question. And then the question gets going into North Korea, then all of a sudden we're talking about Donald Trump's taxes. And I'm seeing headlines now that the editor of the New York Times might be facing charges because it was illegal to release those tax returns. Now, if this doesn't wake people up, I don't know what will. Because Hillary's a liar. She will ruin this country. And if she happens to croak, Tim Kaine's going to be our president. And that's even less appealing after watching that crap last night. Anyway, Bill, thanks for your line. I'll talk to you later.
Thank you. Good call. I love that. Tim Kaine was the creepy clown analogy works very well. The one I saw earlier this morning, and he definitely there's just something wrong with that guy. Here's the thing. I brought it up earlier. He claims to be a Roman Catholic, yet he jumped on board like Bob Casey from Pennsylvania did with his fellow liberals in promoting infanticide, which is a crime not only against humanity, but against our Creator. He jumped on board with that for political expediency. That will send you to hell alone. On the other hand, if you're just spouting that you're a Christian or a Catholic specifically just because it looks good on your political resume and you don't really believe it, that'll likely send you to hell as well for misrepresenting, your Christian faith. So Tim Kaine's got no hope. Eventually he's got no hope. There's going to be a big room down there with Biden and Pelosi and Kerry and Kaine and the Cuomo family. I got to tell you, we wonder why this country is in such tough shape. Go back and look at the Arab oil embargo that really started it all in 1973 and wonder if you're a person of faith, you're a godly person, that's the same year of the Roe v. Wade decision. Perhaps those are related. If you're a godly person, you know what I'm talking about, and America has been in decline ever since. 9:30, Bill Colley with you on Top Story. Hey, I've got a conservative who's going after some other conservatives for being lily-livered on the way.